Hello friends, welcome back tonight. We are going to talk History Podcast for Sleep, how medieval nuns brewed beer for sacred rituals. About this, if you're ready to know, then like the video, and subscribe to the channel, but then when you're really enjoying our video, and tell me in the comment which country you are watching our video in, and how much time you have. We love to know. Turn off the lights and enjoy the video. You are standing at the edge of the Sahara, where the air shimmers like molten glass, and the sand stretches so wide it might as well be another ocean. The year is 1324, and you're about to witness something absurdly extravagant, even by royal standards. Ahead of you, a caravan of 100 camels plods forward, each one laden with so much gold that their knees wobble slightly under the weight. At the centre of this procession rides Mansa Musa, the king of the Mali Empire, on a horse draped in silk dyed the colour of a sunset you've only ever seen in dreams. You probably won't make it through this day without feeling at least a little poor. The heat is relentless, but the rhythm of the caravan is hypnotic. The creak of leather saddles, the soft shush of sand shifting underfoot, the occasional indignant snort of a camel who's decided it's had quite enough, thank you. You catch the scent of spices drifting from one of the supply wagons, cinnamon, cloves, something earthy and sweet you can't quite name. It mixes with the dry mineral smell of the desert, and for a moment, you forget you're in the 14th century. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca was an act of devotion, diplomacy, or just the most expensive flex in medieval history. As you walk alongside the caravan, you notice the king's attendants scattering handfuls of gold dust into the wind, because why not? And you can't help but wonder if anyone ever tried to follow the trail back home like a very wealthy breadcrumb path. The locals in Cairo certainly remember him. When Musa passed through, he flooded the city with so much gold that the market crashed, and it took years for prices to recover. Economists still shudder at the mention of his name. But tonight, we're not worrying about inflation. Tonight, we're just drifting along with the camels, the gold, and the quiet hum of history unfolding. If you're enjoying this journey, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps others find these stories too. And before we go further, tell us in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. The sun dips lower, painting the dunes in shades of honey and rust, and the caravan slows to a stop for the evening. Tents rise like sudden mushrooms, their fabrics dyed in patterns so intricate they seem to shift in the flickering torchlight. Servants move with practiced ease, unpacking copper pots and rolling out carpets woven with threads of silver. You half expect a medieval food critic to pop out of nowhere, taking notes on the presentation. Musa's personal chef, a man whose spice collection could bankrupt a small kingdom, is preparing a dish of roasted lamb rubbed with something called waki leaves, a West African herb that smells like a cross between thyme and a secret you're not important enough to know. The aroma curls through the camp, teasing the edges of your hunger, and you realise you haven't eaten since the 21st century. Historians still debate whether Musa's chefs ever accidentally invented a dish so delicious it caused a minor diplomatic incident. Probably. As you wander through the camp, you notice a group of scholars huddled under a canopy, their voices low and animated. They're mapping the stars onto a length of vellum, arguing over whether that one constellation looks more like a giraffe or a very confused goat. Astronomy in Musa's empire wasn't just academic. It dictated trade routes, planting seasons, and the best time to throw a truly legendary banquet. One of the scholars glances up at you and smiles. "You look lost," he says, not unkindly, "or possibly time-travelling." You don't correct him. Nearby, a camel chews thoughtfully on a tassel from a royal cushion, utterly unimpressed by the fact that it's carrying a small fortune in gold. You can't blame it. After a while, even a treasure just becomes baggage. The fire crackles, the stars wheel overhead, and somewhere in the distance a lute begins to play softly, as if not to wake the desert. You take a seat, lean back, and let the weight of the day dissolve into the night. The firelight dances across faces as storytellers take their place in the circle, their voices weaving tales older than the dunes themselves. One recounts the legend of Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali, with such vivid detail you can almost hear the rustle of savanna grass beneath his feet. Another murmurs a fable about a tortoise who outwitted the sun, a story so ancient even the camels seem to nod along in recognition. You catch snippets of conversation between merchants debating whether Egyptian cotton is truly softer than Songhai silk, a scandalous claim, and watch as a scribe carefully inks numbers onto a ledger, his quill scratching out the economic heartbeat of an empire. Every now and then a burst of laughter rises from a group playing Mancala with pebbles and a board carved into the sand. The rules, you quickly realise, are both simple and utterly incomprehensible unless you were born knowing them. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa's court ever settled disputes with a particularly high-stakes game of Mancala. Losers had to drink the spiciest pepper brew in the kingdom, a punishment disguised as a dare. As the night deepens, a servant offers you a cup of dabaleni, a sweet, milky drink flavoured with ginger and just enough honey to make you forget you're in the middle of a desert. You take a sip, and the warmth spreads through you like a slow sunrise. Nearby, a musician plucks the strings of an ngoni, its melody winding through the camp like a lazy river. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you're not just hearing the music, you're floating on it. Then a sudden hush falls over the crowd. Mansa Musa himself has emerged from his tent, his robes shimmering even in the dim light. He doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone is enough to command silence. He gestures to a map unfurled at his feet, its edges weighted down by smooth stones from the Niger River. The route to Mecca is marked in gold leaf, a glittering path across parchment. You lean in, listening as he speaks of the cities they'll pass, the alliances they'll forge, and the bridges they'll build, literally and otherwise. His words are measured, but there's a flicker of excitement beneath them, the kind that comes from knowing you're about to make history. The camels, ever unimpressed, choose this moment to start a low, grumbling chorus. Musa pauses, raises an eyebrow, and then, to everyone's surprise, laughs. Even kings, it seems, can't argue with camels. The tension breaks, the music starts up again, and you settle back into the rhythm of the night. Somewhere beyond the firelight, the desert stretches on, vast and patient, holding its secrets close. But that's a story for another hour. For now, let the music carry you away. Dawn arrives like a hesitant guest, painting the sky in pale pinks and golds. The camp stirs slowly, as if reluctant to leave the comfort of dreams. Servants move like shadows, packing tents and dousing fires, while the camels groan their disapproval at the early hour. One particularly dramatic beast collapses to its knees, with a theatrical sigh as if to say, "You expect me to walk all day?" Again, you can't blame it. Today's journey will take the caravan through the Takaza salt mines, a place so barren even the scorpions look bored. The air here is thick with the tang of salt, and the ground crunches underfoot like stale bread. As you walk, you pass labourers chipping blocks of salt from the earth, their faces wrapped in cloth against the dust. They work in near silence, their movements rhythmic and practiced, as if they've been doing this since the world began. Historians still debate whether the salt miners of Takaza ever traded jokes with passing caravans. If they did, they were probably very salty jokes. Ahead, Musa's advisors huddle over a map debating the best route. One insists on a detour to avoid a patch of quicksand. Another argues that the quicksand is probably fine, and that they're wasting daylight. Musa listens, then points to a third path, a compromise that pleases no one but gets them moving again. Leadership, it seems, is herding camels and advisors. As the sun climbs higher, the heat becomes a living thing, pressing down on your shoulders like a heavy blanket. You take refuge under a canopy strung between two wagons, where a scholar fans himself with a palm leaf and complains about the unseasonable weather. It's always unseasonable in the desert. He offers you a slice of watermelon, chilled in a clay pot buried in the sand, a small miracle in this oven of the landscape. The juice is so cold it makes your teeth ache, and you've never tasted anything more perfect. In the distance a mirage shimmers, a lake that isn't there, a tease from the desert. The camels, ever pragmatic, ignore it. They've seen this trick before. By midday, the caravan stops to rest in the scant shade of a rocky outcrop. A group of merchants break out a chessboard, its pieces carved from ivory and ebony. They play with the intensity of men betting their last gold coin, though you suspect the stakes are just bragging rights. One of them catches you watching and grins. "Ever played?" he asks. You shake your head. "Good," he says, moving his queen. "It's bad for the nerves." The afternoon stretches on, slow and syrupy. The world narrows to the sound of footsteps, the creak of saddles, the occasional snatch of song from a traveller trying to keep their spirits up. The desert, vast and indifferent, swallows it all. But as the sun begins its descent, a shout goes up from the front of the caravan. There, on the horizon, is the faintest smudge of green. An oasis. The promise of water, shade, and maybe even a bath. The camels, sensing the end of their torment, pick up their pace. For the first time all day, they seem almost eager. You'll reach the oasis by nightfall, but for now, just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. The desert rewards patience, even if it never admits it. The oasis emerges from the haze like a mirage made real. A cluster of date palms swaying in the evening breeze, their fronds whispering secrets to anyone who cares to listen. The air here is different, thicker, sweeter, mixed with the scent of damp earth and ripe fruit. A spring bubbles up from some hidden depth, its water so clear you can see the smooth stones at the bottom, worn round by centuries of gentle persistence. As the caravan spills into the grove, there's a collective sigh of relief. Servants rush to fill water skins, while the camels, suddenly reinvigorated, make a beeline for the shallow pool, their great heads dipping low to drink. One particularly enterprising beast decides to lie down in the water, soaking its belly with a look of pure bliss. You can't fault its logic. Historians still debate whether this oasis had a name, or if travellers simply called it "thank the gods it's here." Musa dismounts with the grace of a man who's spent more time on horseback than on solid ground. He stretches, rolling his shoulders, and you catch a glimpse of the mortal beneath the golden silk. Even kings get stiff backs. A servant hurries over with a cup of something frothy and pale, fermented camel's milk maybe, or some other delicacy you're not brave enough to try. Musa takes a sip, nods approvingly, and then does something unexpected. He kicks off his sandals and wades into the spring, robes and all. For a moment the entire caravan stares. Then one by one others follow suit. Soon the pool is full of splashing, laughing people, their exhaustion washed away like dust from a traveller's feet. You sit at the water's edge, dipping your fingers into the coolness, and wonder if this is what paradise feels like. Not some distant heaven, but a patch of shade and a moment of rest at the end of a long day. Nearby, a group of musicians has set up under the oldest palm tree. Their instruments, a kora, a flute carved from bone, a drum stretched tight with goat hide, begin to weave a melody that's equal parts celebration and lullaby. The rhythm matches the pulse of the oasis, slow and steady, as if the earth itself is humming along. You lean back against a sun-warmed rock and let your eyes drift closed. The music, the water, the rustle of leaves, it all blends into a single soothing sound. You could stay here forever. But the desert has other plans. Night falls softly over the oasis, the sky deepening to a velvet blue studded with stars so bright they seem within reach. Fires flicker to life around the camp, their light dancing in the ripples of the spring. The air is alive with the murmur of conversation, the clink of bowls, the occasional burst of laughter. Someone has produced a sack of dates, and they're being passed around like treasure, which in this moment they might as well be. You're handed a bowl of thieboudienne, a fragrant dish of fish and rice cooked with vegetables and just enough spice to make your tongue tingle. The flavours are unfamiliar, but comforting, like a recipe passed down through generations of mothers who knew exactly how to feed a weary soul. You eat slowly, savouring each bite while around you stories unfold. A merchant recounts his encounter with a ghost ship off the coast of Zanzibar, a vessel with tattered sails and no crew, drifting silently under the moon. A scholar argues that it was just a lost fishing boat, but the merchant insists the deck was covered in footprints that vanished mid-sentence. Historians still debate whether medieval travellers genuinely believed in ghost ships, or if they just enjoyed scaring each other around the fire. Musa sits at the centre of it all, listening more than speaking, his face unreadable in the firelight. Every now and then, he tosses a date pit into the flames, watching it spark and vanish. You wonder what a king dreamed of on nights like this. Gold, power, or simply the next oasis, the next cool drink, the next stretch of shade. A child, barefoot and grinning, darts past you, clutching a wooden toy camel. It's crudely carved but clearly beloved, its paint worn smooth from years of play. For a moment the grandeur of the caravan fades, and you're left with this simple truth. Even the richest empire is made of moments like these. Small, ordinary, human. The fire burns low. One by one, the storytellers trail off, their words giving way to yawns. The musicians play their final notes, letting them linger in the air like the last drops of wine in a cup. You stretch out on your mat, the sand still warm beneath you. Above, the stars spin their endless stories, and the palms sway in a lullaby only they know. Sleep comes easily here, cradled by the oasis, by the hum of history, by the quiet certainty that tomorrow will bring another mile, another marvel, another step closer to Mecca. But for now, rest. The caravan moves like a slow river at dawn, winding between sandstone cliffs that glow amber in the morning light. You're riding near the middle now, lulled by the sway of your camel's gait. Its fur smells of dust and warm hay, and every few minutes it sighs deeply as if contemplating the meaning of life, or perhaps just breakfast. Ahead, Musa's standard flutters, a golden lion on indigo silk that catches the wind like a living thing. A merchant sidles up beside you on a donkey that looks profoundly unimpressed with its life choices. "First pilgrimage?" he asks, offering you a handful of roasted chickpeas from his sleeve. They're seasoned with something smoky and faintly citrusy, a taste that shouldn't work but absolutely does. As you chew, he points to a peculiar rock formation in the distance. "We call that the Sleeping Scholar. See how the shadows make it look like he's nodding off over his books?" Sure enough, the stones arrange themselves into the perfect silhouette of a dozing figure, complete with what might be a scroll slipping from relaxed fingers. Historians still debate whether medieval geologists took these formations as divine signs or just inside jokes carved by wind and time. The morning passes in a haze of heat and dust. Around noon, the caravan stops so travellers can adjust their loads. You watch as a scribe carefully repacks his ink pots between layers of wool to prevent them from boiling over. Nearby, a spice merchant conducts a dramatic quality check on his saffron, holding threads up to the sunlight like a jeweller appraising diamonds. "The redder the gold, the lighter the soul," he murmurs to no one in particular. Then, disaster. A camel decides it's the perfect moment to sit down, sending a cascade of copper pots clattering across the path. The resulting noise would wake the sleeping scholar himself. Servants scramble as the pots roll merrily in all directions, their polished surfaces flashing like misplaced coins. Musa, to his credit, doesn't even turn his head. You get the sense this happens at least once a week. As the chaos settles, you notice something glinting half buried in the sand, a tiny glass bead. Its blue still vibrant after who knows how many years in the desert. You pocket it absently, a souvenir of this strange shimmering journey. The shadows grow longer. The air smells of warm stone and the faint, resinous scent of distant acacia trees. Somewhere ahead lies the trading post of Takeda, where the real journey begins. But that's tomorrow's story. Takeda emerges at dusk like a dream half-remembered. Low mud brick buildings turning pink in the fading light, the scent of baking bread cutting through the desert's dry perfume. As the caravan winds through the gates, children materialize as if by magic, their bare feet kicking up little puffs of dust as they dash between the camels. One bold girl offers you a woven grass bracelet in exchange for news from the road, clearly a budding historian in the making. The marketplace is still alive with last-minute bargaining. You drift past stalls where Tuareg traders in indigo robes weigh blocks of salt against measures of gold dust, their scales balanced on a worn wooden box that's probably older than the town itself. A spice merchant demonstrates the quality of his ginger by burning a pinch. The sharp, clean scent cuts through the heavier aromas of leather and sweat. Nearby, a storyteller gathers a crowd with tales of the Blue City to the north, where, he claims, the very walls are made of lapis lazuli. His hands move like birds as he describes towers that catch the morning light and throw it back at the sky. Historians still debate whether Takeda's famous singing wells actually produced musical tones, or if travellers just like the romantic notion of water that could carry a tune. Musa disappears into the governor's residence, his advisors trailing behind like anxious ducklings. You take the opportunity to explore, following your nose to a food stall where a woman cooks flatbread on a convex metal dome. She flips the dough with practiced flicks of her wrist, catching the edges just before they burn. "Try it with this," she says, handing you a small clay pot of honey so dark it's nearly black. The first taste is overwhelming, floral and woody all at once, with a depth that makes your ordinary honey back home seem like sugar water by comparison. As night falls, lanterns bloom throughout the market like earthbound stars. You find a quiet corner near a fountain where the water runs in a never-ending murmur. A cat materializes to inspect you, decides you're acceptable, and settles onto your lap with the supreme confidence of its kind. Somewhere in the distance, a lute begins to play. The notes rise and fall like breath, like footsteps, like the slow turning of the world toward morning. Sleep finds you there, with honey on your tongue and a purring cat for company. The desert will still be there tomorrow. For now, rest. Morning in Takeda arrives with the scent of baking bread and the distant call of a muezzin weaving through the dusty streets. You wake to find the cat gone, vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving only a few tawny hairs on your sleeve as proof it wasn't a desert spirit. The caravan is already stirring, repacking goods with the efficiency of people who have done this 1,000 times before. A young boy darts past, balancing 3 pomegranates in his outstretched arms like a circus performer, his laughter bouncing off the mud brick walls. Musa holds court near the town's central well, listening to petitions from local merchants. One particularly animated man waves his arms as he describes bandits who allegedly stole his entire shipment of ostrich feathers. "They left the salt!" he exclaims, as if this were the greatest insult of all. Musa nods solemnly, but you catch the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth, the universal tell of a man trying very hard not to laugh at something objectively ridiculous. Historians still debate whether medieval courts kept straight faces by practice or simply had better poker faces than modern diplomats. You're drawn to a stall where an old woman sells what appear to be glass marbles. Tears of the desert, she calls them, holding one up to the light. The tiny spheres are actually fossilized resin from ancient acacia trees, each containing minuscule bubbles of air that last saw daylight when your ancestors' ancestors were learning to walk upright. You buy one, not because you believe her claim that they ward off scorpions, but because there's something magical about holding a million-year-old air bubble in your palm. The caravan moves out as the sun climbs higher, Takeda shrinking behind you into a smudge of ochre against the endless tan. The road north unfolds like a scroll, revealing new wonders at every turn. A flock of cream-coloured goats tended by a child no taller than your waist. A stand of thorn trees where weaver birds have built nests like upside-down teardrops. A single abandoned sandal lying forlornly by the roadside, its story forever untold. As evening falls, the scouts spot something remarkable. A series of shallow caves in a sandstone cliff, their mouths dark and inviting. The caravan halts for the night, and by unspoken agreement, everyone heads for the caves like sleepwalkers drawn to beds. Inside, the rock walls still hold the day's warmth, radiating it back like a mother's embrace. Someone lights a fire near the entrance, and the flickering light paints stories on the stone, dancing giants, flying camels, a lion chasing its own tail across the ceiling. You settle against your pack, listening to the soft snores echoing through the cavern. Somewhere in the darkness, water drips with metronomic regularity, counting down the hours until dawn. The desert outside hums its nighttime lullaby. Wind over stone, the occasional yip of a distant jackal, the endless sigh of sand settling. Tomorrow brings the halfway point of the journey, but tonight belongs to the caves and their ancient stony dreams. The caves exhale you at dawn, their cool breath lingering on your skin as you step back into the world of light and heat. The caravan reassembles itself with the quiet efficiency of a body waking from sleep, stretching, shaking off dust, preparing to move. A young girl offers you a cup of something steaming and herbaceous that tastes like morning itself. "It's just wormwood and mint," she says, as if she hasn't just handed you the most refreshing beverage in human history. Today's walk takes you through a landscape of surreal rock formations, towers of sandstone sculpted by wind into shapes that defy logic. One looks uncannily like a grumpy camel. Another resembles a scholar so deep in thought he's turned to stone mid-scroll. A merchant points to a particular formation. "We call that the Sultan's tent," he says, indicating a fluted pillar topped by a mushroom cap of stone. "They say if you sleep beneath it, you'll dream of your future." He doesn't mention whether anyone actually wants to know their future after 8 hours of walking in this heat. Historians still debate whether these landmarks served as actual navigational aids or just gave bored travellers something to argue about. At midday, the caravan stops near a dry riverbed where a single stubborn acacia tree has somehow found enough water to survive. Its shade is meagre but precious, and soon a dozen people are packed beneath its branches like figs in a crate. A storyteller begins recounting the legend of a city that sank into the dunes when its king broke an oath to the desert spirits. Some say on quiet nights, he murmurs, you can still hear their market bells ringing beneath the sand. A child clutches her mother's sleeve, equal parts terrified and delighted. You notice Musa standing apart, studying a map with his navigator. The man points to something in the distance, a barely visible smudge on the horizon. Gao, he says, and Musa nods. The word carries weight. Gao means the Niger River. Gao means fresh water and proper baths. Gao means you're nearly halfway to Mecca. The afternoon passes in a haze of heat and dust. Your feet develop a rhythm independent of your thoughts. Left, right, left, right. The world narrows to the swaying backside of the camel in front of you, and the growing shadow it casts as the sun descends. Then, unexpectedly, green appears on the horizon. Not the tired olive of desert shrubs, but the vibrant emerald of proper grass, the Niger's floodplain. A cheer goes up from the caravan, and even the camels seem to walk faster. By dusk you can hear it, the whisper of reeds, the occasional plop of a fish breaking the surface. And then, suddenly, there it is, the great river itself, wide as a lake, its water the colour of liquid amber in the fading light. Children splash at the shallows while women fill water jars with practised ease. On the far bank the lights of Gao twinkle like earthbound stars. The camels head straight for the water, their dignity forgotten. You're not far behind. Tomorrow will bring boats and bargaining and the bustle of a major trading city. But tonight belongs to the river, to the joy of cool water on sun-baked skin, to the simple miracle of having arrived. The Niger River at dawn is a living mirror. Its surface so still it perfectly duplicates the world. The fishing pirogues with their curved prows, the herons standing one-legged in the shallows, even the pink streaks of sunrise. Everything exists twice. You sit on the bank with your feet in the water, watching tiny fish investigate your toes with professional curiosity. A woman nearby pounds cassava into flour, her mortar and pestle keeping time with the river's quiet rhythm. Thump, pause, might be the most peaceful sound you've ever heard. Musa's people are already negotiating with boatmen for the crossing to Gao. The haggling is conducted entirely in proverbs. A river crossed is a story told, says Musa's quartermaster. But a dry boat is a friend indeed, counters the head boatman, patting his vessel like it's a prized racehorse. They'll be at this for hours. You decide to explore. Gao's waterfront is a carnival of colours and smells. Dyers stretch bolts of indigo cloth along the shore, their hands stained blue up to the elbows. A spice merchant's stall looks like a sunset exploded, mounds of turmeric like powdered gold, paprika like crushed rubies, saffron like saffron, which has always looked expensive just sitting there. You pause at a food stall where a man pours batter onto a griddle, creating perfect golden circles of funkeso. He flips them with a flick of his wrist, catching each one mid-air with the casual flair of a street performer. Try it with suya spiced in, he says, and suddenly your breakfast is an adventure. Historians still debate whether medieval African cities had official best breakfast awards, but if they did, Gao's street vendors surely swept the category every year. As you wander, you notice something peculiar. Nearly every building has small ceramic plaques embedded in its walls. Some show geometric patterns, others depict animals or what might be constellations. A passing scholar notices your curiosity. Poems, he explains, fired into clay so the walls themselves whisper to those who know how to listen. You press your palm against one and imagine you can feel the words humming beneath your fingers. The call to cross comes just as the heat begins intensifying. The boats are massive affairs, more floating platforms than vessels, with canopies of woven grass that cast dappled shade. You claim a spot near the edge, where you can trail your hand in the water as the shore slowly recedes. A little girl shares her handful of kokoro with you, crunchy fried dough balls that taste like happiness and sesame oil. Halfway across, the boatman points to a disturbance in the water. "Hippos," he says cheerfully, steering slightly away from what looks like a series of small, suspicious bubbles. You make a mental note to keep all limbs inside the vehicle. Gao grows larger on the opposite bank, its clay walls glowing honey gold in the midday sun. The city seems to rise straight from the river, as if the Niger birthed it that morning. Music floats across the water, drums certainly, but also the metallic shimmer of what might be a gubassi being tuned. The air smells of fish and frying plantains and the indefinable electricity of a place where 1,000 stories intersect. The boat bumps gently against the dock. Welcome to Gao. Gao swallows you whole. One moment you're on the dock, blinking in the sunlight, the next, you're swept into a current of humanity so dense you could probably lift your feet and still move forward. The street, if you can call it that, is more of a suggestion between buildings, a winding path just wide enough for 2 donkeys to pass if they hold their breath. Every surface teems with life. Merchants calling from stalls stacked improbably high with goods, children playing a game that involves kicking a leather ball through a series of chalk-drawn gates, old men arguing over a Sadiq board with the intensity of generals planning a siege. You follow the smell of baking bread to a courtyard where communal ovens line the walls like giant beehives. Women shape dough into intricate braids and spirals before slapping them onto the domed interiors. The resulting cobs emerges minutes later, puffed and golden, with a crust that shatters satisfyingly under your fingers. A baker presses a still warm loaf into your hands along with a dollop of something green and garlicky. "Eat," she commands. You obey. Musa's party has attracted the usual crowd of petitioners, gawkers, and opportunistic souvenir sellers. One particularly persistent merchant keeps trying to sell the king a genuine pharaoh's tooth, despite repeated explanations that A, pharaohs were Egyptian, B, this is Mali, and C, that's clearly a goat's molar. Musa handles it with the patience of a man who's had worse offered to him before breakfast. Historians still debate whether Gao's legendary floating market actually floated, or if the name came from merchants' tendency to get carried away with their sales pitches. You slip away down a side alley where the noise fades to a manageable roar. Here, the buildings lean so close together they nearly kiss at the upper stories, creating a tunnel of shade that's blissfully cool. A doorway reveals a quiet courtyard where a scribe works under a canopy of drying manuscripts. His pen moves effortlessly across the page, turning ink into poetry with each graceful stroke. He looks up and smiles. "Everyone gets lost in Gao eventually," he says. "The question is, are you lost from something or towards something?" The philosophical moment is interrupted by a sudden commotion. A runaway donkey barrels down the alley, trailing a string of colourful prayer beads from its tail. Close behind comes a very flustered holy man, his robes hitched up to his knees for better sprinting. You press against the wall just in time. The scribe sighs. "Tuesdays," he explains, as if that covers it. As evening falls, you climb to a rooftop where someone has strung hammocks for stargazers. From here, Gao unfolds like a living map. Lanterns blooming in the dusk, cooking fires winking to life, the distant glimmer of the Niger holding it all in its liquid embrace. A vendor passes below, calling, "Bissap, sweet Bissap," like it's a love song. You settle into a hammock as the first stars appear. Somewhere below, a flute begins to play, a wandering, contemplative melody that seems to echo the city's heartbeat. The air smells of wood smoke and something floral you can't name. Tomorrow will bring new wonders. The great mosque's shadow stretching across the market, the camel caravans arriving from Timbuktu, the 1,000 small dramas that make a city breathe. But tonight belongs to the hammock, to the stars, to Gao's gentle murmuring as it tucks itself in for the night. The call to prayer rolls over Gao like a gentle wave, its melody weaving through the maze of streets as the first light of dawn stains the sky peach and gold. You wake in your rooftop hammock to find a sparrow perched on your toe, regarding you with bright-eyed suspicion, before flitting off to more important bird business. Below, the city stretches and yawns itself awake. Shutters creak open, water jars clatter at the well, and somewhere a donkey expresses its opinion of mornings in general with an impressive display of vocal range. Musa holds court in the governor's courtyard beneath a massive tamarind tree. Today's petitioners include a group of Tuareg traders seeking safe passage north, a griot requesting patronage for his epic poem about that time it rained for 7 years, and, inexplicably, A man with a chicken that allegedly lays square eggs. The chicken looks deeply embarrassed by the whole situation. Musa listens to each with equal gravity, though you notice his shoulders shake slightly when the Eggman demonstrates his proof, what appears to be a very crudely carved wooden cube. Historians still debate whether medieval African courts employed official chicken handlers, or if people just showed up with poultry and hoped for the best. You drift toward the dye pits, where men waist-deep in indigo vats stir the bubbling liquid with long poles. The air here is thick with the earthy, slightly metallic scent of the dye. It clings to your clothes, your skin, even your thoughts. A master dyer shows you how the fabric emerges not blue but green, only transforming when exposed to air. Like magic, he says, wringing out a length of cloth with hands stained the colour of twilight, but slower and with more backaches. The afternoon finds you in Gao's Grand Market, where the stalls form a labyrinth of wonders. Stacks of cola nuts like miniature cannonballs, bolts of fabric so fine they float on the breeze, and an entire stall devoted to elaborately carved combs. You pause at a spice merchant's display, where tiny mountains of cumin, coriander, and something labelled simply mystery form a fragrant topography. The merchant grins and offers you a pinch of the mystery spice. It tastes like sunshine and regret, delicious, but with a heat that creeps up on you like bad decisions. As you cough discreetly into your sleeve, a commotion erupts near the goldsmith's quarter. A camel has somehow gotten inside a jewellery stall and is currently wearing 6 necklaces with an air of regal entitlement. The owner alternates between shouting at the camel and apologising to the goldsmith, who seems more impressed than angry. He's got good taste, the goldsmith admits, adjusting a particularly lavish piece around the camel's furry neck. By sunset, you're back at the riverbank, where fishermen haul in their nets with rhythmic pulls. The catch flashes silver in the fading light, 100 tiny mirrors winking up at the sky. Someone builds a small fire, and soon the smell of roasting fish joins the evening chorus of insects and distant laughter. The Niger flows on, patient as time itself. Somewhere downstream lies Timbuktu, and beyond that the Sahara again, and eventually Mecca. But for this moment, there's just the fire's glow on the water, the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders, and the quiet understanding that tomorrow's journey will come soon enough. Dawn breaks over Gao like a dropped water jar, sudden, sparkling, impossible to ignore. The caravan reassembles by the northern gate, its members moving with the purposeful lethargy of people who know exactly how far they have to walk today. Musa's new acquisitions include 3 scholarly-looking types, probably linguists or astrologers or possibly both, a crate of books that smells vaguely of cinnamon, and, for reasons no one explains, a baby ostrich on a leash. It pecks at your sandal with alarming enthusiasm. The road north unfolds like a scroll of parchment, pale and slightly crumpled at the edges. The landscape changes gradually. The Niger's lush fringe gives way to scrubland, then to the first tentative fingers of the Sahara. You pass villages where children wave from atop mud brick granaries, their silhouettes like exclamation points against the sky. At one settlement, an old woman presses a clay pot into your hands. For the thirst ahead, she says. Inside is something cool and faintly sweet, baobab juice maybe, or some other miracle of desert hospitality. Historians still debate whether medieval travellers kept these pots as souvenirs, or if there's a dune somewhere piled high with 1,000 for the road vessels. By midday the heat becomes a tangible presence, a weight pressing down on your shoulders, a shimmer in the air that makes the horizon waver like a mirage. The caravan moves slowly now, conserving energy. Even the ostrich has stopped trying to eat everything and settled for panting dramatically in the shade of a supply cart. Then, a discovery. One of the scouts returns with news of an oasis not on the maps. The group follows him to a small depression where a handful of date palms stand guard over a spring no larger than a cooking pot. The water is warm and tastes faintly of minerals, but in this moment it might as well be nectar. Everyone takes turns drinking from a shared gourd, the ritual solemn as communion. As you rest, you notice carvings on the rocks, names, dates, fragments of poetry left by generations of travellers. Some are so old the stone has begun to reclaim them, smoothing the edges until they're barely legible. You add your own mark, a simple star, and wonder who might find it centuries from now. The afternoon walk is easier, the knowledge of water still fresh on your tongue. The ostrich recovers enough of Nuns to chase a desert hare, resulting in a comical display of speed versus manoeuvrability that ends with both parties staring at each other in confused truce. Even Musa cracks a smile. The sunset paints the dunes in shades of rose and violet. The caravan makes camp in the lee of a sandstone outcrop. The scholars build a small fire and begin debating whether the stars are better for navigation or storytelling. The ostrich falls asleep standing up, one leg tucked neatly beneath it like a feathered tripod. You lie back on your mat, watching the Milky Way spill across the sky like a dropped necklace. Somewhere out there is Timbuktu, its legendary libraries waiting in the dark. Tomorrow's walk will be longer, the dunes taller, the sun less forgiving. But tonight belongs to the stars, to the soft snoring of camels, to the quiet certainty that somewhere beneath these same constellations, other travellers are also looking up and wondering. The last embers of the campfire sigh into ash as a pre-dawn breeze stirs the sand around your feet. Somewhere in the darkness, a camel grumbles in its sleep, perhaps dreaming of cooler days or particularly tasty thorns. You wrap your cloak tighter and watch the eastern horizon soften from black to indigo, the stars fading one by one like reluctant party guests. Musa stands silhouetted against the coming light, already dressed for travel. His famous golden staff catches the first rays of sun, scattering flecks of light across the dunes. There's a quiet intensity to his posture this morning, the focused energy of a man who sees his destination on the horizon at last. The scholars pack their star charts with unusual haste while the cooks distribute packets of dates and nuts for the road. Even the ostrich seems to sense the shift, pacing impatiently at the end of its leash. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa knew he was making history that morning, or if he was simply thinking about breakfast. As the caravan moves out, the desert reveals its magic hour, that fleeting time when the sand appears gilded and the air hasn't yet begun to shimmer with heat. Your footprints vanish almost immediately behind you, the dunes smoothing themselves with each breeze as if erasing all evidence of passage. A lone falcon circles overhead, its shadow darting across the sand like a second traveller keeping pace. By midday the first signs appear, faint wheel ruts in the dust, then discarded date pits blackened by countless fires. Then, impossibly at first, then undeniably, the hazy outline of walls and minarets materialises on the horizon. Timbuktu. The name alone had sounded mythical back home, but here it rises from the desert like a sandcastle built at the world's edge. The city greets you with a symphony of smells, wood smoke and baking bread, the sharp tang of drying fish from the river, the musky sweetness of leather-bound books carried by passing scholars. The streets hum with a dozen languages as merchants from across 3 continents haggle over everything from salt to philosophical treatises. A bookseller's stall displays volumes with covers of supple goatskin and pages so fine they're nearly translucent, each one a small miracle of craftsmanship and knowledge. Musa disappears into the scholarly quarter, while the rest of the caravan scatters like seeds in the wind, some to bathhouses, others to cafes where mint tea steeps in delicate glasses. You find yourself drawn to Sankor University, where students debate under shaded archways, their voices rising and falling like the desert wind. An elderly professor notices your interest and smiles. "Every question answered here breeds 3 new questions," he says. "That's how you know we're doing it right." As sunset paints the mosque's mud brick walls gold, you climb to a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. Below, lanterns bloom one by one until Timbuktu resembles the night sky brought to earth. The air carries snippets of music, a lute here, a drum there, blending into an impromptu symphony. Somewhere a woman laughs, the sound as bright and clear as a bell. This is where our journey ends, not with fanfare but with the quiet satisfaction of having arrived. The camels will rest, the scholars will debate, the books will wait patiently on their shelves. And you'll carry these memories like the precious cargo they are. Stories folded carefully between your ribs, ready to be unpacked on lonely nights or shared with fellow travellers when the moment is right. But for now, just breathe. Listen to the city humming below. Feel the cool night air on your skin. Let your eyes grow heavy. The desert will keep its watch. Sleep well, traveller. You've earned your rest.